This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Dozens of evacuees from Birchwood Terrace are still living in hotels. That comes more than 4 months after the apartment complex was deemed structurally unsafe. The continuing saga has tenants questioning why the provincial government is footing the bill instead of the property owner. The CBC's Kristen Annabelle has more.
Hi, girls.
Debbie Ross has been living in this hotel room for months.
This is it.
With just a few cherished possessions, like her husband's ashes and her cats. But the rest of her belongings, such as her bed and other furniture, is still here at Birchwood Terrace, unused until Ross and her fellow tenants get the green light to move back in.
And if people think that we are having a good time in here, you've got to give your head a shake. I'm not milking the system. I just cannot afford to go and move my stuff out.
Tenants were forced to vacate with just 8 hours' notice after a serious structural issue was found in the steel columns of the St. James Building's parkade.
No one from Birchwood Terrace will end up on the streets.
In May, the NDP government announced the province will cover the housing for any resident that's been displaced, and they haven't stopped paying since.
We asked the province how much money they've spent so far and how many people are still living in hotels. They got back to us and said they didn't know. The caretaker of the building told the tenants about 60 people are going to move back in. That means this could end up costing the government over $1 million when you look at the length of time that people have been staying in the hotels, plus the cost of the hotel.
It could take years.
These tenants say it's time the owner of the building, Ladco Company, be held accountable.
They should take some responsibility for neglect. When you are owning a building, you should keep it up to standard. And they certainly haven't done that.
And that Ladco should be paying their hotel bill.
Honest to God, they should be paying the price for us. It should not be the city or the province.
Ladco declined a request for comment. They sent a notice to tenants earlier this month saying they hope some people can move back in mid-October, but they will have to pass the city's inspections before that happens. Kristen Annabelle, CBC News, Winnipeg.
25,000 healthcare workers have threatened to walk off the job. They're giving the government 2 weeks to dish out an acceptable contract offer, or they'll hit the picket line. CBC's Ian Fraze has the latest.
Manitoba is on the verge of its biggest strike in a century.
25,000 healthcare workers is a substantial number. We haven't seen these numbers since 1919.
Gina McKay of QP is hearkening back to the famous strike in which tens of thousands walked off the job. The difference this time, by law, workers must provide essential services during a labor dispute.
A strike is always the last resort, but healthcare is in a staffing crisis, and this crisis demands urgent action.
QP and MGEU are giving the employer until October 8th to reach a deal. If not, 25,000 healthcare support workers in Winnipeg and southern Manitoba will go on strike. These are healthcare aides, home care workers, and those working in nutrition and laundry services.
Prioritize care, prioritize these workers, and prioritize coming back to the table with an offer that we can take back to our members.
During these negotiations, support workers have been offered the same wage increases given to nurses and teachers, but their starting wages are much lower. Kyle Ross leads MGEU.
Workers can find jobs at Tim's, McDonald's, or the deli counter at Co-op for far more money and work that is physically and mentally less demanding.
A labor studies professor says an NDP government that's talked about fiscal restraint could be in a bind.
These are some of the least paid workers and those who need a bump in pay and improvement in conditions the most. So in some senses, this is the most difficult challenge for the government.
If a strike happens, patients will be impacted. Ross warned it could mean fewer baths for residents and meals served with plastic tableware. Shared Health says the negotiators are continuing to bargain in good faith. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meantime, dozens of staff at the Aboriginal Health and Wellness Centre could also soon be going on strike. It includes more than 50 union members who work in 25 specialized healthcare and social service areas. They serve Indigenous patients and clients in more than a dozen program areas. The group has voted in favor of a strike mandate after more than 2 years without a contract and nearly a year of negotiations. Wages are the top issue, according to the union. Remote rural First Nations across Canada are struggling to support pregnant women in their communities so they can have healthier babies closer to home. Studies in the last 2 decades show a gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous populations when it comes to miscarriages and infant mortality rates. The CBC's Karen Pauls has more.
Look at that face.
Tennille Easter shows off photos and video of her bouncing baby boy who's home with a sniffle on this day.
Oh my gosh, he's smiling.
There's joy now, but 3 years ago, as an 18-year-old living in a northern Manitoba First Nation, Easter had a miscarriage.
And I was bleeding, so I went to the hospital, and then that's where they gave me the bad news. It was very hard and traumatizing for me.
Easter's story echoes those of many women living on remote First Nations and the maternal care crisis they face.
Studies show the rates of stillbirths and babies who die in their first week of life is more than 2 times higher for Indigenous communities than the Canadian average. Some of the risk factors include pre-existing medical conditions, young maternal age, and reduced access to prenatal care and good nutrition.
And Glenn Ross sees this as head of the Opaskwayak Health Authority.
There was really no support for young mothers that were expecting, and as a result of that, there was a lot of bad outcomes.
Most women on remote and rural First Nations are forced to travel to big cities to have their babies. Health officials are working to find solutions. They tried to hire midwives, but they couldn't recruit anyone, so they rolled the funding into 3 doula positions. Evelyn Fisher is one of them.
When you hear the word doula, they're helpers. They help you, and they help you through one of the most vulnerable times of your life.
The doulas help pregnant women with grocery shopping and cooking. They provide mentorship, education, and traditional activities, like creating a birthing bundle that includes a baby ribbon skirt and moss bag.
We find that classes are very successful, and people come back because they get that sense of they're welcome, they're safe, and they can share.
I think my favorite one is this one.
Easter says she was nervous about her second pregnancy and grateful Fisher was there to help her through it.
Evelyn really got me out of the house, got me to do walking. And I had fun at those classes. It really made me feel good about myself.
Researchers say physician shortages and the closure of hospitals have created a maternity care crisis that could be solved by offering more services on First Nations. Karen Lawford teaches in the midwifery education program at McMaster University.
Bring it back to your community. Bring it back to, the nursing station. Bring it back to your home. Build a birthing center.
Indigenous Services Canada says 85 First Nations are receiving funding for midwifery initiatives, but ISC acknowledges the need for more training programs tailored to the needs of the communities.
Oh my gosh, look at his hair. I tell you, he's like the sweetest baby ever.
So more pregnant women can receive culturally appropriate and safe care, and more babies can be born closer to home. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Opaskwayak Cree Nation, Manitoba.
Breast cancer is one of the most commonly diagnosed cancers in Manitoba women. And now the province is making changes with how it screens for the disease. But it's not happening right away. CBC's Alana Cole has the details.
Today, Manitoba's health minister announced by the end of next year, self-referral mammograms will be available to women starting at age 45, with a goal to lower that age to 40 sometime after that. Now, right now in this province, women 50 to 74 who don't have any symptoms can call Breast Check and schedule a screening mammogram every 2 years. The self-referral process means you don't need a healthcare provider to refer you. Dr. Donna Turner is the Chief of Population Oncology at Cancer Care Manitoba.
The science is really emerging in this area, and we are watching what is happening. In Manitoba right now, we're not seeing a big increase in cancer in women in their 40s. What this will allow is for women to find their cancers early. It doesn't prevent cancer when you find it early, but you do get a chance to find it early.
There has been a push to lower the age people can self-refer for screening. Turner says this allows women in their 40s to start having the conversation about what's right for them. She points out there's a larger number of false positives in that age group, leading to further testing before learning they don't have cancer. Something that Turner says is really important in all of this. If you notice something isn't right, don't wait for screening. See your provider.
If you know your breasts and you know what looks right, if you notice puckering or dimpling or bleeding from the nipples, anything that is just not right for you, those are things that you need to look for.
I mentioned earlier, this change isn't happening right away. Turner says it takes time to get the system ready to support more screening and everything that goes with it. Here's an example. Turner says right now there's about 16 technologists that are part of the screening program. They're looking to add 4 or 5 more. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Grain handlers at 6 ports in the Vancouver area are now on strike. The strike action comes mid-harvest, and many, like Manitoba producers, say the timing couldn't be worse. CBC's Georgie Smythe reports.
Workers at several Metro Vancouver grain terminals walked off the job this morning. They headed to the picket lines at 7 a.m. local time, 3 days after their union served that strike notice. Both the union, which represents more than 600 members, and the employer, the Vancouver Terminal Elevators Association, say they could not come to an agreement on a new contract. They've been bargaining on these new terms since November last year. Wages, pension benefits, scheduling and overtime averaging are among the sticky issues. According to Canadian grain farmers, more than half of all Canadian-grown grain last year moved through these affected terminals.
Vancouver exports about 28 to 30 million metric tons of grain a year. So for every day we're shut down, that's $35 million of export potential that we're losing.
We also spoke to the union about how potentially disruptive this work stoppage could be.
There is long-reaching consequences. We, in the end, will still get the grain out when the time comes, when we get a contract. But we didn't take this decision lightly. The farmers are our brothers. They're the people who supply us the product that we ship, we clean, and we grade and we blend. So we're very cognizant of how it impacts them.
We've also heard from the Labour Minister, Stephen McKinnon. In a tweet, he said he'd spoken with both the GWU and the Vancouver Terminal Elevators Association yesterday. At my request, parties have agreed to resume negotiations alongside federal mediators, adding after a bumper crop summer, Canadian farmers and businesses need to get their harvest to market and parties need to work hard to get a deal. But as it stands here in Vancouver, these workers remain at the picket lines. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
More zebra mussels have been found in Clear Lake at Riding Mountain National Park. Parks Canada staff found what they described as multiple living juvenile zebra mussels on September 19th and 20th. Zebra mussels were first found in the lake in November 2023. Another mussel was found in June 2024. In July and August, Parks Canada attempted to isolate existing mussels to the Boat Cove area of Clear Lake, but an underwater containment curtain failed 2 days after it was installed. Parks Canada says zebra mussel infestations cost Manitoba taxpayers an estimated $10 million per year. Let's bring in weather specialist Riley Lachuk now. Riley, a beautiful day here in Winnipeg today. That heat has started to return.
Yes, certainly. If you
have some time off over the next few days, boy, I think you lucked out, because we're looking at a banner couple of days weather-wise, something a little bit more summer-like for this time of the year. In fact, we're going to keep rolling with the summer 3.0 term, because that's where our temperatures are really going to be at over the next few days. That's because of a ridge of high pressure that has built in over the prairie provinces that is clearing our skies and keeping us dry and warm for the next several days at least. Not a lot to see really right across Western Canada. Bit of cloud making its way and a few sprinkles through northwestern Manitoba, but boy, oh boy, hard pressed to find some cloud cover really right across southern Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. And that pattern is what we keep over the next few days at least. Down to 11 overnight tonight in Winnipeg, southwest winds at 10 overnight tonight. So we're looking at a pretty calm evening tonight. Winds stay pretty calm tomorrow as well. 14 degrees first thing in the morning. Putting this into context, we should be at 16 for a daytime high for this time of the year, and temperatures only go up from there as we head into the afternoon hours. Southwest winds, maybe a breeze here and there, but up to 26 degrees, Brittany. Temperatures like this sticking around as well. I'll have more on that coming up in about 10 minutes.
All right. Thanks so much, Riley.
You're welcome.
Shock and now anger. Why history buffs are calling out decisions that left pieces of the city's past in ruins. More on the demolition that sparked the frustration straight ahead. History buffs and heritage groups are outraged to find some of Winnipeg's past reduced to rubble. Stone and metal columns from buildings dating back to the 1800s are left in ruins after the demolition of Air Canada Window Park. The demolition is part of the city's redevelopment of the downtown park. But a local historian says the demolition site includes pieces of the old columns, which had been installed as historical features when the park was built in 1985.
At one point, somebody obviously felt that these were important enough building fragments to save them, put them in the park. They all had interpretive plaques describing what they were, and sadly, almost 40 years later, they have no value at all.
A city spokesperson tells CBC the old columns don't hold official heritage status and could not be preserved. But Heritage Winnipeg says it should have been consulted because it would have worked with the city to have those items removed and reused. Advocates are demanding equal rights and permanent resident status for all migrant workers. They say the afternoon rally today outside the Union Centre is pushback for the wave of anti-immigrant sentiment in Canada. CBC's Zubina Ahmed explains.
Dozens of people rallied in downtown Winnipeg demanding equal rights for temporary work permit holders, international students and refugees. It included a call to end racism when it comes to affordable housing, healthcare, and work permits. One of the advocates talked about the rampant racism against bus drivers. Chris Scott is the president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, or ATU.
We have a large portion of our membership is either from India or from the Philippines, and they are treated to barrages of racism by the general public on a daily basis.
Hafiz Jato moved here as an international student 5 years ago. He now works as a project coordinator with the Manitoba Federation of Labour. He says it's critical to support international students amid the recent 10% cap for study permits and stricter rules for postgraduate work permit holders.
With the changing policies now are coming to an end, and a lot of people who have called Winnipeg and Manitoba their home for almost a decade are being asked to go back to a country that they may not recognize now.
Fauzia Sheikh Ali moved here as a refugee 10 years ago. She says migrants can't find affordable housing.
That's exactly what we have to focus on. Landlords, what they do, increasing rents on students, on immigrants or migrants who not aware of their rights.
Emily Halderson is with MANSO, or the Manitoba Association of Newcomer Serving Organizations. She demands a quick and easy fix to healthcare reform.
Lately, we have been seeing a huge increase in refugee claimants. Just what we found recently is their children are having a lot of issues. They're not able to access that health care, and the children are asked for some documentation that doesn't exist.
Halderson says all refugee workers contribute to the economy and they should get all the healthcare benefits they need. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The City of Winnipeg unveiled upgrades to the area around the standalone public washroom on Main Street. The facility is the only permanent city-owned public washroom in Winnipeg. New paving stones feature diamond-shaped impressions, which represent the spreading of the star blanket inside the nearby Thunderbird House. The area also includes new lighting, seating, beds for medicinal plants, and story markers that share Indigenous teachings.
What we hope that it'll do for the area is to make it more of a welcoming space. You see that we have picnic shelters and trees and medicine, which is something that's very important to the Indigenous and First Nations community. And so when we did the area stakeholder engagement with them, this is what they asked for. And after we're seeing, maybe I believe it's been 2 years now, we're seeing its fruition. So we're very excited.
The project was funded with more than $500,000 from the city, the Winnipeg Foundation, TD Bank Group, and others. The city approved the upgrades last year in order to increase safety and make the space more inviting. The washroom has peer support workers on site to help facilitate people who use the facility. Riley is back in now, and we've been talking about the sunshine. We've been talking about summer 3.0. It almost feels like we should be back up on the rooftop doing the show because it's just that nice.
Back up on the roof or back in the garden.
Right? One of them. Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, I've had a few people actually ask me over the course of today even about when we can expect our first frost in Manitoba.
Ooh, I don't even want to hear that word.
I know. Looking at some of the longer range models, it looks like we're going to keep the warmer overnight temperatures even toward Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay. So, I'll take that.
Quite a ways out yet, but things could change between now and then. So take that with a grain of salt. I want to show you some daytime highs from Western Canada today, because these are the types of temperatures that we can expect here in Manitoba as we get through into the day tomorrow. So 27s, 28s through Regina and Saskatoon today. Looking at temperatures in the 30s for southern Saskatchewan tomorrow, high 20s into Alberta and even into the BC interior. Here in Manitoba, above seasonal today as well. Look at some of these temperatures, 24 in Dauphin, 26 in Swan River through the afternoon today. A bit cooler in the north. This is where we've still been feeling the effects of that last area of low pressure that moved through Manitoba, giving us a few showers still through parts of northern Manitoba. But temperatures warmer than this continuing as we get into the next couple of days and even beyond that. Here's a quick look at our temperature trend over the next 10 days. So you can see those temperatures remaining warm as we get through the weekend. Into next week, though, we start to see things falling back towards seasonal for this time of the year. Normal seasonal high would be about 16 degrees. So you can see that even into the beginning of October, we're still feeling temperatures that are warmer than seasonal for this time of the year. Bit of cloud cover still in northern Manitoba. The rest of us, though, under a bright sunny sky today. A few rain showers still out of this system in northern Manitoba, stubbornly hanging on into northeastern Manitoba. That does move out as we get into the overnight period tonight. Starting tomorrow, mainly sunny skies at high pressure ridge at its peak as we get through Wednesday into Thursday. That's really going to clear things out and warm things up as we get into the next few days. Our next best chance of some precipitation in northern Manitoba, at least, comes as we get later into the work week, which I'll show you in just a moment here. You can sort of see the beginnings of that riding some of these upper level winds here across northern Manitoba into the Hudson Bay coast. This will bring us a chance of showers into northwestern Manitoba, particularly as we head through later Thursday and into Friday. But for the rest of us in Manitoba, we are under mainly sunny skies for the next several days at least. High pressure ridge, you can see that building into Western Canada here. That does start to move a little bit further to the east and further north as we get through Thursday, holding in place for Friday into Saturday. We don't start to see this really breaking down and our pattern changing again until we get even into later Sunday and into Monday, which I'll get to in your long range forecast here. So sunshine continues Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Temperature staying in the high to mid 20s as we head through the rest of the work week. Sunshine, 25 degrees for Friday. I sound like a broken record, Brittany, when I say sunshine continuing into the weekend as well. Our next best chance for some showers here in the south, at least, comes as we get into Monday and Tuesday of next week. I'll have that in your 7-day coming up a bit later on.
Riley, I think that's a broken record people don't want to fix. So.
Yeah, I guess.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre urged MPs to defeat the Liberal government and trigger an election. We'll bring you the latest from Ottawa straight ahead. Justin Trudeau's government is set to face a major test this week. The Conservatives have introduced their first non-confidence motion during this sitting of Parliament. It's their attempt to topple the minority Liberal government and force an election. Kate McKenna reports.
In a campaign-style speech, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre made his case for Canadians to go to the polls.
The biggest and most open land of opportunity the world has ever seen. That is our vision. That is our purpose. Now, let's bring it home.
But Poilievre's first crack at toppling the government was undercut last week.
We will not be supporting Pierre Poilievre's motion.
When the NDP and the Bloc Québécois said they wouldn't support the Conservatives' non-confidence motion.
Nice try, buddies, but we will take our own decisions, and we will serve the Canadians and the Quebecers, and we'll do what is the best interest of the population.
That means the chance of a snap election being called this week is almost nil.
Canadians want us to work. They don't want to go to an election. They've elected people to work until October of 2025, and that's what they want.
This week, your rivals are calling a vote to possibly force you out of office.
Speaking on the American talk show Late Night with Stephen Colbert, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau brushed off criticism.
I've been here and I've been steering us through all these things, and people are sometimes looking at change. But the reality is, I deeply believe in continuing to fight climate change and continuing to invest in people, and continuing to be there to support people, and I'm going to keep fighting it.
While this vote, which is set to take place tomorrow, seems destined to fail, Conservatives can bring forward another non-confidence motion this Thursday. In total, they'll have 5 opportunities to bring forward non-confidence motions between now and Christmas. They'll need to shore up support from other opposition parties if they want to trigger an election. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Lebanese officials say more than 550 people have been killed during 2 days of Israeli airstrikes. Over 1,600 others have been injured in the strikes targeting Hezbollah. Thousands have fled southern Lebanon in the biggest exodus since the 2006 Israel-Hezbollah war. CBC's Crystal Gamansing reports.
Israel Defense Forces say they killed Hezbollah commander Ibrahim Kobaisi in a targeted strike Tuesday. But he wasn't the only person caught in the airstrike, which hit an apartment building.
We should all be alarmed by the escalation. Lebanon is at the brink.
The UN Secretary General expressing fears being echoed by world leaders.
I call again for restraint and de-escalation at the border between Lebanon and Israel.
Israel and the Lebanese militant group are locked in an intensifying exchange of cross-border strikes.
Nasrallah
is leading you to the brink of the abyss, says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. By Tuesday afternoon, Israel said its Air Force had used more than 2,000 munitions in recent attacks on more than 1,000 sites within Lebanon. Hezbollah has managed to get by Israel's air defense system, striking communities in the north, although few people are still living along the border. Lebanese residents, meanwhile, continue to move north away from the border with Israel. Tens of thousands of people are said to have been displaced recently, and Lebanese officials say they don't have enough resources to support them. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Well, after his late-night television appearance, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spent the day at the United Nations. He commented on the recent escalation in fighting between militant group Hezbollah and Israel.
The people of Lebanon, Lebanese Canadians, are watching this and incredibly worried. We need to make sure there is de-escalation, both by Israel and Hezbollah. We need to protect civilian lives. We need to make sure we're moving towards peace and stability in the entire region. And Canada is going to continue to be there to step up and call for peace and help create, once again, that peace and stability that we need.
Trudeau is in New York for the opening of the UN General Assembly. U.S. President Joe Biden spoke to the General Assembly today at a time where a number of conflicts are raging. But as Caroline Bargut reports, the outgoing leader is still sounding a note of optimism.
This is President Joe Biden's fourth and final time addressing the UN General Assembly. He started off by talking about his history in American politics and comparing it to today. When he was first elected to the Senate in 1972, the U.S. was fighting in Vietnam. The Cold War was raging on, and the Middle East was on the brink of war. But he says the world got through it, and we can do it again.
Today, the United States and Vietnam are partners and friends. And it's proof that even from the horrors of war, there's a way forward. Things can get better. We should never forget that. I've seen that throughout my career.
On the war in Gaza, Biden once again called for a ceasefire and hostage deal now and pushed for a two-state solution to a round of applause. As for the escalating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, which has already killed more than 500 people in Lebanon, Biden said it's not too late to calm tensions, but he didn't say how.
Even if the situation has escalated, a diplomatic solution is still possible. In fact, it remains the only path to lasting security, to allow the residents from both countries to return to their homes and the border safely. And that's what we're working tirelessly to achieve.
About the war between Russia and Ukraine, Biden said the U.S. will not let up support until Ukraine wins. He said the war in Sudan has to end too, but didn't offer any solutions. And he announced the U.S. will give $500 million to help African countries respond to the Mpox virus and is donating 1 million Mpox doses right away. He said there will always be conflicts that pull the world apart, but leaders have to make sure the forces holding nations together are stronger. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Washington.
Coming up, it's an all-you-can-eat buffet for the bears in Whiteshell Provincial Park, all thanks to some easily opened garbage bins. We'll hear what's happening when we come back. Bears are breaking into garbage bins in Whiteshell Provincial Park, and pretty easily too. In West Hawk Lake, the garbage used to be stored in wood and wire structures before being carted off to the dump. But recently, they've been replaced by big metal bins with plastic lids, like you'd see behind an apartment building here in the city. And it's not slowing the bears down. Michael Campbell is a professor of environment, earth and resources at the University of Manitoba. He spoke about the issue this morning.
So what did you think when you saw these images of the damage the bears did? Like, essentially, the lids were no match for them trying to get into this, clearly.
Well, I guess I have to say I have two things. In the first case, I was shocked to see the kind of containers that were being used. And then having seen this kind of containers, I wasn't surprised that the bears were getting into them. There's a lot of online content showing bears in exactly those kinds of garbage containers.
You said you were shocked to see these kinds of containers. Why? Are you referring there? Your last sentence would suggest that most people should know that a bear could get into this?
Well, I mean, there certainly is a lot of evidence to suggest that bears can get into those kind of containers. I've seen dozens and dozens of videos online showing bears that get into exactly those kind of garbage containers. And the rule with bears is if you remove the attractant, you remove the bear. If they can no longer get into it, the bears won't hang around.
So Ainsley Houndel, who lives, near West Hawk Lake and took many of these photos that we're sharing, she says there's been reports of bears eating out of the garbage bins, as we mentioned, in the Whiteshell Provincial Park. But there's also an incident where a bear was eating from a bin that was close to a schoolyard. What's the concern if you interrupt a bear when it's eating in this way?
Well, it may become defensive of its food source, and that could lead to a negative interaction. Essentially, it could lead to someone being hurt.
What's a proper receptacle for a bear if you don't want them to get in?
If you can open the container with a crowbar, it's not bear proof. That is basic Bear Smart 101.
So if you can open it with a crowbar, meaning it has to be like extra difficult, what's a test for what is a proper container? Ainsley was talking about the cages and such. What's your sense of that, those types of receptacles?
Well, the cages worked. The problem I'm sure that the park branch is dealing with is it makes it collection of garbage a lot more difficult. But there are commercial bear-proof containers available that are used in other parts of the world that bears can't get into. The opening mechanism has to be such that they can't get their paw in there with their claw and open it. Some bears in some parts of the world, like Yosemite National Park, for example, can get into cars.
How dangerous are black bears to humans? I mean, a lot of Manitobans have become really used to seeing bears. You hear people saying, well, they're just part of our life. Is there a concern that we might become too casual around them?
I would be very concerned that people become too casual around them because all it takes is one bear with a slightly more aggressive disposition to create problems like we had in Shamattawa this summer.
What should people understand if they encounter a bear in this way as it's eating? What should their behavior be?
Their behavior should be to walk away slowly, keep your eyes on the bear. So in all likelihood, in that situation, the bear is eating, he's focused on the food. I would say particularly at this time of year, where they're in hyperphagia, like all they're concerned about is putting on weight. And as long as he's not disturbed while it's eating, and you get out of there, that's exactly what you should do.
People have been saying they want the bins replaced as soon as possible. The province did send CBC a statement, so I'll read it to you here. It says, quote, Manitoba Parks takes bear safety very seriously. It is aware of the waste collection issue in the South Whiteshell region and is proactively working toward operating solutions, end quote. The province also went on to say to be aware that bears become more active, as you're talking about, in the fall as they approach hibernation season. What do you think of that, of the response from the province?
Well, it's probably, I understand where they're coming from, but it's probably too late in the sense that they should know, people within the province should know that those bins are not bear proof. They wrote the documents themselves. If you look at the provincial government website on Bear Smart, it says very clearly, if you can open it with a crowbar, it's not bear proof.
Riley's back in. And Riley, we were both just saying that we're no strangers to bears. My parents live up on the mountain in Vancouver. You're on the farm. We've seen them, but my goodness those ones are brazen.
Ooh, brave, yeah.
You'll want to stay clear of that. Maybe time for a bear walk tomorrow if the bears are getting out themselves far away in the forest.
Might want to get some distance between the bear and the dog.
Yes, bears and
Yes.
keep them separate. But a good day for a walk nonetheless.
Yes, absolutely. Great day to get outside tomorrow. Here's a look at your dog walking forecast. Start tomorrow, a bright sunny day tomorrow. Again, I know I sound like a broken record because there's just not a lot to talk about over the next several days. But hey, here are Marshmallow and Dude looking like they're enjoying the bed. Talk back at cbc.ca is where you can keep sending your dog pics to. And it's going to be a lovely day for a walk tomorrow. Winds fairly light in the morning, 14 degrees first thing. By the afternoon, 26 southwest winds gusting to 20. And even by 6 o'clock tomorrow evening, supper time, we're at 24 degrees. So pretty warm for this time of the year, 10 degrees above seasonal. There is some active weather to talk about, though. Not here in Manitoba. A little bit of instability through southwestern Ontario and into parts of Quebec, but it's south where I want to draw your attention to. And our next named storm of the hurricane season forming right now, threading the needle really between the Yucatan Peninsula and parts of Cuba. This one officially named Helen, right now sustained winds at 85 kilometers an hour. It will brush the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico through the overnight hours tonight as a tropical storm with sustained winds at 100 kilometers an hour. But along the Gulf Coast of Florida and along the Panhandle already, hurricane watches and warnings in place. This because we're expecting this to make landfall. It's a Category 3 hurricane with sustained winds close to 200 kilometers an hour. And of course, this means not just heavy rain and high winds, but storm surge, possibly some localized flooding along the Panhandle. So we'll be keeping an eye on this storm as it makes its way into the coast off the Gulf of Mexico. Forecast for tonight across Manitoba, 10 in Swan River, 9 in Brandon. We're looking at 11s and 12s through northwestern Ontario. Clear skies overnight tonight. A bit cooler in northern Manitoba, still a few lingering showers into the northeast. Shamattawa at 11 tomorrow afternoon. This cloud really does clear out as we get through into the afternoon hours. So a general sun cloud mix through northern Manitoba through the afternoon tomorrow. Low 20s for Flin Flon and the Pas, 17 in Thompson in the afternoon tomorrow. Again, above seasonal. Starting the day tomorrow really in the double digits already across southern Manitoba, and it only goes up from there by the afternoon, looking at temperatures close to 30 through Westman, 29 in Swan River and Melita, 28s into the Brandon region, and low 20s and plenty of sunshine as well, Brittany, into northwestern Ontario.
Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, scientists in Belgium are testing how pear trees will react to climate change. They've simulated growing conditions for the fruit to match what they expect it to be like 16 years from now, and they've got some results.
After 1 year of experiments, we found that the effect of climate change at the 2040 horizon on the quality of pears was very minor.
Scientists did note that in higher temperatures, pears tend to be less firm and have more sugar. That could be bad news for growers because less firm fruit can't be stored as long, but the experiment continues. Still ahead, Riley Lachuk is back with our last check on our forecast. Stay with us. A quick warning before our next story. It contains images some may find disturbing. CBC News has learned more than 7,000 hunters in Alberta have applied to join a government program to kill grizzly bears that pose a threat. As the CBC's Malika Karim found out, support for the program is far from unanimous.
These scars, a painful reminder of how dangerous grizzlies can be.
We were hunting actually only kind of 25 minutes away from home.
Hunting for elk in the foothills east of the Rockies, Carmelo Silvestro heard something behind him.
When I turned, thought maybe it was elk. No, it was not one, but 4 large grizzlies.
One of those grizzlies mauled Silvestro, and DNA tests have shown that same bear had killed a hunter 3 years ago. The attack came just months after the province announced changes to its grizzly bear management plan, a shift that could allow the threatened species to be hunted by the public for the first time in nearly 2 decades, though only 30 licensed hunters have been chosen to take part.
There's nothing about this that resembles a hunt, actually. They'll have a finite area, a finite amount of time to pursue that bear, and they'll be after a specific animal.
The province says it's addressing the rising number of conflicts with bears, but the plan has critics.
What experience does this person have in dealing with conflict bears, not just the fact that they have a hunting license?
Grizzly bears remain a threatened species in Alberta, despite that 18-year hunting ban. And conservation groups worry the plan won't protect people or bears.
Grizzlies have not seen a huge population increase. In 2021, there were an estimated 800 or 900. In 2010, there were about 700 or 800.
Silvestro says he supports hunting the bear that attacked him.
She's a problem bear. She's got that aggressive behavior. She's killed once. There's, nothing to say that she won't do it again.
But because the bear has already killed, no civilian hunters will be used to track and destroy it. The province says fish and wildlife officers will do that on their own. Malika Karim, CBC News, Calgary.
Time for a look at your 7-day forecast now. A couple of warm days, several warm days ahead for us in southern Manitoba. 26s for Wednesday and Thursday. A little bit windy on Thursday. South winds gusting to 50 through the afternoon. So keep that in mind. Sunshine continues right through the weekend. Our next best chance for some precipitation, and again, once we get into that pattern change, is into next week. We have a chance of showers in the afternoon on Monday, and then some windy conditions again on Tuesday. And temperatures falling to more seasonal, but again, our overnight lows are staying quite warm as we head through even into next week. Look at this gorgeous picture from Mario, who shot this at Clearwater Lake, which is just north and just outside of the Pas. So picturesque picture there. I'd love to see yours at talkback@cbc.ca. I'm getting hungry, and now we have a story about pizza, so this is going to be great. An Edmonton restaurant claims to serve the world's largest deliverable pizza. How big is it, Brittany?
54 by 54 inches. It also needs at least 2 people, Riley and I, to carry it, and it needs a customized delivery vehicle. Here's tonight's Daily Lift.
This is the one we're making right now, the 54 by 54 inch. For this one at $350, but again, depends on the toppings you get, goes up to $400. So in between that price range, 50 to 60 people. Our record until now is 2 at a time. The normal pizza, we can rotate the sides inside. For this one, we don't have a choice. We take it all out, rotate it, cook every corner, because obviously oven has one corner which is the most heated part. We take it all out and then rotate and put it back in. We are figuring out to make our life easier every day, and we're finding tricks to do it. We use our bottom oven instead of the top one. It's heavier to lift from the top, and then now we put our table at the bottom, which is one of the tricks. Another thing is, I guess we weren't trained enough at the starting days to open the dough that fast. It took 20 to 25 minutes just to open the dough for the first time. I guess it's 10 minutes now. It's not a trick, it's just a training, I guess, experience, I would say, that we are gaining every day.
Our switcher director, Rich, just reminded us that any pizza can be a personal pizza. You just have to put your mind to it.
Right? You just need to believe. Well,
I
would like
to feed both of us.
Right? We'll get on that from Edmonton. We'll see you back tomorrow night. Have a great night.